Okay, today is part 3 about tzitzis, and today we're going to wind down on what you call it. We're going to finish up the issues having to do with the garment that the tzitzis are made out of, and we'll see that a lot of the issues we talk about are particular, or more relevant at least, to children. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch says, midaraisa, the only fabric that needs tzitzis midaraisa is one that's made of wool or linen, and the Ramah says, no, it's not true. Midaraisa, it applies to every fabric. So, according to the Ramah for Ashkenazim, you're Mekayim mitzvah deraisa if you wear tzitzis made of cotton, while according to Shulchan Aruch, that would be only mitzvah drabanan to do it on a cotton baguette. Then the Mishnah Berurah says, if you want to be yotze the shitas of mechaber, it would be a good thing to wear them wool and tzitzis because of that. Now, even though according to the Ashkenazim that all these different types of fabrics are chayiv tzitzis midaraisa, if you have a full corner garment made of leather, the din is it is not chayiv, not even midrabanan, not chayiv at all. And the reason is because you only chayiv on a fabric that's made by weaving threads together, like the way you make wool and linen fabrics. But leather is not woven together; it's really just a big piece, and you just cut it to size. So then that is not chayiv and tzitzis even midrabanan. So therefore, the same thing is if I make in a modern version of it, instead of a leather garment, I make something out of nylon or rubber or paper, just a big sheet of it, and I just make that into some kind of a garment, some kind of I don't know what, then there's no mitzvah to put tzitzis onto it. So now that's what so everything I said so far is, if I use straightforward, that's a straight dip. The Ramosha says that the same thing is, if I would take polyester fibers and weave them together to make a garment, Ramosha says that's also not chayiv and tzitzis. He says it's true that it's woven. It isn't woven like wool and linen. It's true. But even so, since you could make the exact same fabric out of one solid piece of polyester, you didn't have to make polyester into fibers. You could have a polyester sheet of polyester. Therefore, there's no chayiv and tzitzis, even though you happen to have made it out of fibers that you wove together to be like as if they were a fabric made by weaving. And Tzitz Eliezer brings a bunch of rayas that it's not true. He doesn't agree with that. He says, Lamaisa, if you made it, you did make a fabric out of it using weaving, fibers together, and therefore he holds really, and then he thinks it is chayiv and tzitzis. But he says, and therefore you have to put tzitzis onto it. You can't. Ramosha would say you don't have to put tzitzis on it at all, and he says no, you should put on tzitzis. He says, but Lamaisa, there are those who argue on him, and he says so. Therefore, he says you shouldn't make a bracha. Therefore, he says you shouldn't make a bracha. So we'll see in a second from Rabbi Rees, but that seemingly, according to Tzitz Eliezer, if the din is, he's saying put on tzitzis but don't make a bracha, it's hard to imagine you could sell it to people as a pair of tzitzis, because of course people buy a pair of tzitzis, they assume you make a bracha on it. So it doesn't seem like such a great idea to do that and sell it to people and make it and tell them that it's good for tzitzis. In fact, which is what Rabbi Rees said. Now, what happens if you have a garment that's made of partially wool and partially leather? Okay, in other words, partially made out of a material that requires tzitzis and partially not. So the din is, it depends on what's the roiv. Is it mainly wool, then it's chayiv and tzitzis? And if it's mainly mainly leather, then it is not chayiv and tzitzis. Okay, now that's true. Just as an aside, it's true even if the wool part is big enough to be chayiv and tzitzis. It's big enough. We talked about the other time about how big it has to be. Even if it's big enough, if most of the garment is made of leather or some other material that doesn't need tzitzis, then you're not chayiv and tzitzis. Now, if we put these two pieces together, it comes out like this. If you have a fabric that's made out of, it's cotton with a little polyester on the edges, let's say on the trim or the corner or this and that, then it's chayiv and tzitzis midaraisa, because the cotton is the majority. It's chayiv and tzitzis midaraisa. What happens if we have a garment that's made of a cotton rayon blend, and it's more than 50% of that blend is the cotton part of it? Then the din is that it's also chayiv and tzitzis. Okay, it's not because really when you have a cotton rayon blend, what's going on here is that every fiber is a mix of cotton and rayon. It's a mix of cotton polyester. Every fiber is a mix of those two things. So we depend on the roiv, and if if the fibers are more than 50% cotton, then it's chayiv and tzitzis, and more than 50% rayon, then Ramosha would say it's not chayiv and tzitzis, and Tzitz Eliezer says, well, it's chayiv, but don't make a bracha. Okay, so when Yisra agrees, he said, of course, we could give hashgacha on tzitzis made of wool, obviously. We could also give hashgacha on ones made of cotton also. That's fine also. He said we cannot give hashgacha on one that is made from a synthetic fiber, because and if he said even if it was made of woven fibers, we also shouldn't give hashgacha on it. Again, even according to Tzitz, you shouldn't make a bracha, so we shouldn't be giving hashgacha on it. And as far as the mix of the cotton, polyester, or kali rayon, or something like that, then if it's more than 50% cotton, that would be fine. And we could give hashgacha. It's good for Yechayim Tzitzis, and we can give hashgacha onto it. Now we're going to branch a little bit to the side, and that is we spoke at a different time that in order for the garment to be Yechayim Tzitzis, I think it was the first time, it has to be big enough to cover Roshai v'Rubai of a 9-year-old child. And then we came up with the shiur of exactly how big that has to be. So the Pri Megadim says, that shiur is the shiur, that's the basic shiur for how big tzitzis have to be. But what happens if you have a kid who's less than 9 years old? You have a 5-year-old who's going to be wearing tzitzis. So he says it's good. It doesn't have to cover Rosh of Ruby of a 9-year-old. I mean, the kid would be swimming in it. It has to be cover Rosh of Ruby of that child. So the general rule is, let's say for an adult or somebody else, a regular person, generally it has to be at least that big Rosh of Ruby of a 9-year-old. But if the person who's going to be wearing it is a child less than 9 years old, then then it has to just be cover Rosh of Ruby of that child also. So that is to say, remember we said is that the shiur of Rosh of Ruby comes because it says Asher Techasabai. You'll have to put Gedil and Tasachal Arba Kanfas Ksuscha Asher Techasabai, a bag that you could cover with. So that's for even that everyone who's Chayv and Tzitzis could cover in it. So that's understood to mean is that it's not only is it an objective standard that has to be for a 9-year-old, but it's also there's a subjective angle to it that the shiur could be smaller for people who are younger. It doesn't have to be bigger for people who are older, but it could be smaller for people who are younger. So seemingly, the same thing the Pri Megadim said about a child who's let's say 5 years old, seemingly should be true. What happens if you have a 10-year-old who happens to be shorter than your everyday 9-year-old? Okay, so seemingly the Pri Megadim says that it's good enough for Asher Techasabai includes as long as it's if it covers you, then that's good. Then that's already Chayv Tzitzis. Even if it wouldn't cover a 9-year-old, that seemingly if you're a 10-year-old who happens to be particularly short, it would also work. And for that matter, what happens if you're a very short adult? You have an adult, he's 20 years old, but he happens to be so short that he's shorter than a 9-year-old. If it's covers Rosh Hashanah of that person, seemingly should be good enough for that also. So now let's think about when a company makes tzitzis for children. So seemingly the shiurim that we gave before and of how big tzitzis have to be, this many inches by this many inches, so they could cover Rosh Hashanah of an adult. Seemingly those garments, those begadim that we make for tzitzis, don't have to be big enough for Rosh Hashanah for 9-year-olds. They have to be Rosh Hashanah of the kids who are going to wear them. Which is to say is, if you think about it, you're making tzitzis for 3-year-olds, those tzitzis can be big enough to cover 3-year-olds. Okay, now, of course, we don't know who's going to exactly buy the tzitzis, but when I looked at it, at different kids wearing tzitzis, I measured Rosh Hashanah for the child and measured the tzitzis that their mothers bought for them, and basically, it was always was big enough to cover Rosh Hashanah. Remember that for the Rosh Hashanah, we count the front and the back. So the whole length of that is for Rosh Hashanah. So, in other words, the mother's idea of what fits my child, the size that they go to the store and they're like, this is the size that I buy, is the size that Taka was Rosh Hashanah for that child. So it wasn't Rosh Hashanah. An adult couldn't wear it because it's not big enough. It's not the shiur of Rosh Hashanah of a 9-year-old, but it is Rosh Hashanah for the person who's going to wear it, and therefore that's good enough. So now, so it just brings up a question, which is if an adult would buy one of those tzitzis, let's say it's an adult who's really short who buys a child-sized tzitzis, seemingly that should be okay also because as long as it causes Rosh Hashanah for us. The question just is, should we be concerned that if a person buys, I'm comfortable to say is that if a person buys tzitzis that fit him, then he's going to be buying ones that are either Rosh Hashanah if it's for a child, it'll cover Rosh Hashanah of that person, or it'll be Rosh Hashanah with the minimum shiur we said has to, whatever the shiur has to be. But the question, do we have to be worried, and we'll talk about it in a second, do we have to be worried that a person's going to buy tzitzis that he wants to, they won't be the right size. He wants it for comfort. For him, he likes really short tzitzis, and he'll buy a child-sized tzitzis, even though he's an adult, or even though he's larger, he's going to buy it not to size. Again, when I measured kids whose parents had bought them tzitzis, their parents buy it for size. But is there such a thing of being concerned for comfort? So I'll tell you in a second. Rabbi Rees said, I'll tell you right now. Rabbi Rees said that, excuse me, if we're giving hashgacha tzitzis for kids, and it says on the package these are children's tzitzis, then it's okay. We don't have to worry about that. We could be comfortable knowing that the child who's going to wear it is going to be fit to his size. It'll be Rosh Rubai of that child, even if it's not Rosh Rubai of what would fit for an adult or what the official shear is. And as long as we marked it for that it's for children, we don't have to be concerned. Maybe an adult will buy it, and an adult will wear. Adult who's really big will buy it and wear it, even though it's way too small on him. We don't have to worry about that. As long as it says that it's for children, then we can be comfortable that the people who are buying it are going to buy it for the right sizes, so to speak. Okay, now, another thing to keep in mind is all the things we spoke about the first two times about how big tzitzis have to be, there were a lot of things that we were taking, if I could use a chumrah, a stricter position on them. I have a bunch here. Does Rosh Rubai mean Rosh plus Rubai, or Rosh with Rubai? Or Rosh Rubai is included in Rosh? Does the beged have to be 1.5 amas long or 2 amas long? Does it have to be an amma wide? Are there any requirements for how wide the shoulder straps have to be? Are we worried about on the shoulder straps? Does the neck hold count towards the length, or does it not count towards the length? So these are a lot of things that we took positions on, some of which we took the stricter position on. So the question was, do we have to do that for children's tzitzis when the children are only wearing it l'shem chinuch? They're not wearing it. They're not required in the same way as adults are. And to that, Rabbi Rees thought that yes, we should follow the same rules, except for this one exception that I just mentioned, which was it only has to be Rosh Rubai of that child, not Rosh Rubai of what a general adult would have to be. But that's the only thing we can do different, because in fact the din allows for that very much so. Okay. Now one last group of questions, and that is actually two connected things, which also connects a little to children and what you make the beged out of. Back to our original question, is that we've been talking this whole time about a beged that's made with one big piece of fabric and a hole cut in the middle, and you put your head into it. Okay, so the garment covers the front and back of your body, and nothing on the sides. Okay, and people usually wear that either way. A lot of people wear it on top of their undershirts. Some people even wear it on top of their shirts, etc. But there are kids, a lot of people, particularly kids, who don't like them. They find it uncomfortable because of the fabric they're made out of, or the way it makes them having to wear an extra layer. So people created t-shirt tzitzis, which is made of a soft cotton, so it's more comfortable and for certain people. And also, what they do is they sew the front and the back together. So instead of being this open piece of fabric that just sits on the person's body, the sides are sewn together, which for some people is preferable. So they sew it together below the shoulder, meaning below the armpits. Actually, I should say. And so they just leave enough space for the person to put their arm through this. But they basically created a hole by sewing it together on the sides under the armpits. They place your hand go in. So it's really like a t-shirt because it fits more snugly. It goes all around, and there's a place for your head go in, of course, and a place for your hands to go in this little hole on the side. So some poskim did not like this because they consider them to be undershirts. And so what if they're an undershirt? So first of all, some people thought it would be disrespectful to wear tzitzis right on your skin instead of on top of something else. Some didn't hold to that, but there were those who held like that. And also, some people hold that in din there's something called a farkasus. I don't know if I pronounced that right. In other halachas, that there's such thing. It could be that something that's an undergarment is automatically not considered a garment, so to speak, and maybe it wouldn't be chayvin tzitzis altogether. But the truth is, most don't hold like either of these things, and people assume that this is really it's a t-shirt, which made in a way that you could put tzitzis onto it rather than an undershirt like meant for your sweat, and therefore it's really chayvin tzitzis. But there's another thing that has to do with t-shirt tzitzis, and that is You're only chayim in tzitzis if a garment has 4 corners. Okay, so what happens over here where there's, as I said, it's sewn together underneath the armpit. So there's a slit. There is a place. There is a part that's not sewn together. So there are corners, but there's really only very small, so to speak, corners. The part that the slit only goes up so much. And there's in the tzitzis that other people wear, the more traditional tzitzis. That's just a fabric. The slit goes all the way. So there is no slit. It's just the corner goes all the way to the top. But over here, we have a slit that goes up a certain amount, a few inches, but then there's a lot of sewn together that's sort of it's all one piece then. Like imagine a suit jacket. Okay, a suit jacket has a slit in the back of it, but that slit only goes up a couple of inches. So is that considered a corner that makes you chayv tzitzis? So the Shulchan Aruch says it depends. If the slit or the cut goes up more than halfway, then it's considered to be, so to speak, a corner. Now it could be a 4-corner garment, but if it's less than halfway, then it doesn't count. So for example, imagine if the garment is 25 inches from the person's shoulders to their waist. Okay, then if it's 25 inches, then do we need at least 13 inches to be open or slit in order for it to qualify as what's on the bottom of that to be considered an official corner that could potentially be chayv tzitzis? So the t-shirts are a little bit of an unusual situation. Okay, it's not like a jacket. Like, you may have seen people have a kapata that has a slit in the back of it. If that slit goes up more than halfway, it would be chayv tzitzis. So they avoid that issue by making their corners round of that thing. But if it goes up more than halfway, usually it's that. And there, it's sort of easy to see if it goes up here. If it doesn't go half, here it's a little bit unusual, and that's because, in our example, let's say there's 25 inches of fabric from the shoulder down to the waist, but of that, the sewing together doesn't go from top down. It starts under the armpit. So let's say there's 6 inches of hole, and then comes the part that's sewn together. Okay, so what should we do now? How do we say how do we look at this as to whether it's more than half split or not half split? So El Yerabba says that those 6 inches where the arm fits through are considered open space. So now we just need 7 more inches below. In other words, it was 25 inches altogether. We need 13 inches of open space in order to say the bottom is considered a corner. So we have 6 inches where the arm goes through. We need just 7 more inches below the sewn part together in order to be chayv in a corner. Okay, so which means is we can sew up as much as 12 inches on the side of the shirt. The Chayyim says not like that, and he argues, and he says like this. He says all the open space has to be contiguous. Okay, so the part that's where my hand goes through doesn't count as open space because it's not connected to the other part, which is open below, and the stitching makes it as if everything from the stitching and up is considered closed up. So in our case over here, it's 25 inches from the shoulder to the waist. The 6 inches don't count, so we'd have to have 13 inches. 13 inches. We can only have 13. We have to have 13 open inches below. It means we can only sew up 6 inches. According to El Yerabba, we could have sewn up 12 inches, and according to the Chayyim, we can only sew up 6 inches between them. And the Mishmur is machmir like that sheet of the Chayyim. So that's a limitation on how you want to sew this up to make it fit more snugly. You have to say, how much space is there from the shoulder to the waist, and then that sort of dictates how much we can sew it up. In this context, the Mechaber says, basically the way the Mishnah explains it, that if you put a snap or a button, it's the same thing as sewing it up, and therefore anything above the snap or above the button is considered closed up. So if they put snaps or sewing, it's the same thing, and you have to make sure that below the bottom of all the snaps and the buttons, you still have a roiv of the thing is open up. Okay, so now we spoke to Rabbi Reese about it, and he said like this. He said it's perfectly fine to wear t-shirt tzitzis. It's 100%. There's nothing wrong with them. Kashrus wise, they require tzitzis, and it's okay to wear them. But he did not, whether they're called t-shirts or undershirts, he didn't care. But he did not think we should be giving hashgacha to it to certify something called the t-shirt tzitzis. Okay. Now, as far as what's sewn together, so he said is first of all, the space above the armpits does not count as open space, and that includes also if it's covered with a snap also. And he said, now this is the kid's heart, but a lot of the people who wear these are children. He said we should not take, as I said before, you should not take a different stance for children. We shouldn't say, oh, well, it's only for kids. We could be more meek about this. Okay. One last thing is the Mishabur brings from the Arizal that Al Pi Kabbalah you shouldn't have tzitzis that have sleeves on them. That's Alpi Kabbalah, not min Ikar Hadin. It's just some kind of Alpi Kabbalah. So Rabbi Reese said, technically it's kosher. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to worry about this thing Alpi Kabbalah. But even so, he said we should not be giving hashgacha to it for something like that has sleeves. Okay, so that's the end of our talking about the beged. Next time, which I believe is our last time, we'll talk about the strings and putting those strings on and things related to that.